So, originally, I wasn't entirely sure if I wanted to do this video considering the fact that a lot more details have not yet come out, but there are plenty of things that I have to say about this individual now that he passed. What we do know is that a lot of US politicians are already using their platform to spread the rhetoric that we should have policies that go after all political dissent and political scrutiny of the Republican Party, the GOP, the Trump administration, and anybody who criticizes the general establishment. Conservatives champion their positions on a few main things: the ideas and concepts of common sense, facts, logic, and reasoning. That is their retort all the time. But listen to this fucking gooner make a death threat to a broad group of people.
This video's in regards to Charlie Kirk, and this video's for the fucking liberals. It's war, motherfuckers. We're coming for you. We're coming for you. And spare me your fucking self-righteous bullshit lectures. I don't give a fuck. We're coming for you.
That just sounds like somebody who's ready to murder instead of using common sense, facts, logic, and reasoning. Here's Elon Musk retweeting somebody who pretty much said the same sentiment and said that the left is the party of murder. If you're referring to the Democratic Party, I hate to tell you, but they're not our friends. The best that they can do is infiltrate the DSA and several other socialist organizations, and the worst that they can do, which is what they are currently doing to their modus operandi, is help the Republican Party do whatever the fuck they want. And I'm not entirely sure if I would consider the left to be the so-called party of murder, because there is no left-wing party in the United States, and you also need to ask yourself why. But secondly, and much more importantly, you need to recognize that the right wing exists purely on violence alone. Former GOP political candidate Robert Foster declared that trans people and trans allies should be lined up in a firing squad. 8 years ago, and almost a decade from now, Heather Heyer was murdered in a terrorist attack enacted by a white supremacist nutjob who used to scribble Hitler into his binder that also resulted in up to 32 people being injured. Of course, these are anecdotal claims, but we can also look at this graph that was created by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. It shows that between 2012 and 2017, right-wing violence has been on the rise. So keep in mind, this is referring to the years leading up to the first Trump presidency. This is not current data. But it does show that Laura Loomer would post something that says it's time for the Trump administration to shut down, defund, and prosecute every single leftist organization. If Charlie Kirk dies from his injuries, his life cannot be in vain. We must shut these lunatic leftists down once and for all. The left is a national security threat. But as Trump makes an executive order declaring that all flags in the United States be lowered at half-mast until Sunday at 6 p.m., all for an online political grifter like Charlie Kirk, Trump has invaded multiple cities including Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., and he's even used AI-generated propaganda to insinuate that he's going to target Chicago next. In my opinion, this is Donald Trump's burning of the Reichstag. If Laura Loomer does exactly what she says she's gonna do with the Trump administration, and they completely pull that off, oh my goodness, you better hope that Saturday Night Live doesn't have anything spicy to drop tonight, or else the whole fucking studio is either gonna be incarcerated or they're gonna be shot at, executed. And that's not something I want for them, even though I have my own issues with liberal politics. No, I think that Donald Trump is going full goddamn fascist regime. And I do think that he would go to the length to criminally prosecute the likes of Matt and Trey Stone, who they also made a parody of Charlie Kirk, which by the way Charlie Kirk thoroughly enjoyed. But I do believe that the Donald Trump administration is going to enact some level of revenge here for this, and it's going to be very much within the same spirit of the burning of the Reichstag. What I see in the Donald Trump administration is not an administration that champions principles like freedom of speech, liberty, justice for all, accountability, checks and balances, all of these great and moral traditions that we are instilled upon us from the government that gets us to believe that there is some level of accountability that can be had against unjust power grabs like this. No, what I see is a very vulnerable attempt from this administration to present a strongman, dogmatic cult leader, whom himself is not above using state violence to murder his opposition, who himself is not above working with genocidal psychopaths, who himself is not above working with people who have aligned themselves with anti-Semitic and hyperly racist white supremacists. And not to mention, this administration did try to subvert democracy itself on January 6, 2021. By no means is this administration above the use of violence.
I'm just going to state the obvious here. This is detestable, what's happened. Political violence has become all too common in American society, and this is not who we are.
No. You live on land that was violently stolen from. The problem here is that it is exactly who you are. Never let anybody under any circumstances try to convince you that America is exceptional in anything except for its violent output to maintain its global hegemony. So what better time than now to do a video about Charlie Kirk examining his own philosophy and his ideology. I would categorize Charlie Kirk as American Christian nationalist. This means that Charlie Kirk is definitely a white supremacist. America First is definitely his foreign policy. His biblical views definitely inform his homophobia and his transphobia. And he definitely looks a lot like my cop uncle who also died, so they're both rotting in hell together. But considering that Charlie Kirk died to a literal school shooting, why don't we ask Charlie Kirk what his opinions are on school shootings and gun violence?
So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. You can significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home, by having more armed guards in front of schools.
Okay, dumbass, let's examine that. At your event on September 10, 2025, you had 2 layers of barricades and bounces separating you from the audience. While I cannot 100% confirm this, I can definitely say that there's a pretty good chance that these guards are armed. That, or they are at least equipped with some level of protocol training. Maybe you think that this is like the movie Milk, where the actor portraying Harvey Milk in this film sticks out his hand at a loaded firearm pointed at him by Dan White, a former police officer. Do you think that would protect you from getting shot at in the neck? No, it wouldn't, and it didn't. Or maybe you think that this is like the cowboy days, where each person had a maximum of 6 rounds possible in their firearm, taking 3 paces in opposite directions and hoping that the other one doesn't shoot first. But then we're gonna have to rely on your guards having the quickest reflexes in the world, looking in every single direction, just to make sure that you don't get your ass shot at. Now apply that to what he just said about armed guards at school to prevent mass shootings.
So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. You can significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home, by having more armed guards in front of schools.
You're not just wrong, you are dead wrong.
We should have an honest and clear reductionist view of gun violence, but we should not have a utopian one. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
He is not correct, but there are kernels of truth that there are worth addressing in what he just said. Throughout history, there have been documented slave rebellions that have been enacted against colonizers. Various marginalized communities across the entire world use firearms to protect themselves and to maintain their own sense of self-determination and freedom. My general attitude about firearms is that they are seen as a toy in the United States. They're not treated as weapons with the ability to take somebody's life. They are seen as accessories. sometimes in the same vein as somebody getting a new iPhone, a new video game console, a new purse, a new pair of shoes. Gun shows are basically Anime Expo or Comic-Con, but for mostly right-wing people. Some of these businesses are downright hostile to certain customers. I wonder who. But I would be hard-pressed to say that the state enforcing some level of gun control is an example of the state violating people's basic human rights, let alone constitutional rights, but the government never gave a fuck about that anyway. The fundamental issue with gun control, or gun bans for that matter, is that it gives up a fundamental leverage that is a monopoly on violence to the state. If the state is to exist, you should be able to go to the state and hold it accountable in some way. For the most part, elections are how you do that. You vote somebody out, you vote new people in. But when you're in a police state where people's very lives are constantly at risk, whether through cuts or excessive use of state violence, that's when you're going to want to, at the bare minimum, challenge the legitimacy of the state. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an insurrection per se, but it can actually mean something like defending your community. You can totally try to use your top-tier breadtube logic that you've adapted from the internet, and you can use it until the cows come home. But eventually, you're gonna draw your last card from your Yu-Gi-Oh deck, and the opponent is gonna have the fucking guns, the fucking tanks, the fucking weapons. This is the fundamental reason why I always remind my audience to question authority. Violence is never black and white. It's not a binary issue. There is such a thing as good and necessary violence for the broader community, and then there is bad violence that is supremacist in nature with the purpose of eradication. The other issue is that it fails to address the rudimentary structures of the state, being white supremacy, capitalism, patriarchy, all of these different intersections of oppression. Gun control as a policy is just reform to get us to not question authority. Case in point, the Mulford Act. Do you think the Democratic Party enacted that? No, it was the Republican Party. It was Ronald Reagan, the governor of California at the time. He did this because the Black Panther Party during this period were using firearms to put racist white police officers into check to prevent them from doing police brutality against black community members. That's gun control. And supposedly the pro-gun party is considering banning guns for transgender people? Oh my fucking god, the hypocrisy is literally 2 towers long. So there is truth in what you're saying. But 200 miles away, when Charlie Kirk was getting shot, there was another mass shooting that took place that was far more deadly, and there were children among the casualties. To not meaningfully address the gun violence in the United States is to completely abandon the safety of everybody, including children. With this event being completely dwarfed and overshadowed by what happened to Charlie Kirk during that day, and for what happened to Charlie Kirk being on the forefront of the president and the FBI's mind and agenda, yeah, I don't feel bad for Charlie Kirk. He pretty much made his own bed. Furthermore, let's check out the last question that he was ever asked before he had his ass shot.
Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Counting or not counting gang violence?
This is a piss-poor attempt at some racist framing. That means the last thing Charlie Kirk ever did before he died was try to pull the 1350 card. If you're unaware, 1350 is an attempt to manipulate statistics to make the racist claim that black people consist of 13% of the population, but also commit 50% of crime. This has been widely debunked, as it has been proven that while everybody is innocent until proven guilty, black and white people commit the same amount of crime, but black people are stopped and frisked much more frequently by the police. Given that the police are a racist institution that was founded on racist principles of slave catching, then it is of no surprise that this is happening. This is old school rhetoric at this point. And while there is some level of possible plausible deniability that could be argued in Charlie Kirk's favor, I would like to beg to differ on Charlie Kirk's other views on black people.
How many people unnecessarily died because of DEI? Well, you could rest easy, because they say diversity is our strength. And now those little girls are dead. Those families are without their daughters. But hey,
You have a black fire chief in Austin.
There is no fucking way through this shit-eating grin that this is not a racist fucking remark. Not only is he making the claim that black people are the result of the loss of life, which is an outrageous claim, but just like how I talked about in my Racism is Dumb video, Charlie Kirk's specific brand of racism is distracting people from identifying systemic roots to real problems in our society. And just like in my video talking about the LA fires earlier this year, many fire departments across the United States have been completely gutted in their funding, all while the police continue to get more and more funding. Yet for some reason, this guy still got shot. As I said earlier in the video, this guy's biblical beliefs define what his views are on the LGBTQ+ community.
Is in Leviticus 18 is that thou shalt lay with another man shall be stoned to death. Just saying. So, Miss Rachel, you quote Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself. The chapter before affirms God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters.
So as Stephen King says the obvious to Jesse Waters, you got the MAGA crowd literally advocating for the defamation of Stephen King for criticizing Charlie Kirk. But did we not just hear him do exactly that?
Is in Leviticus 18 is that thou shalt lay with another man shall be stoned to death. Just saying. So, Miss Rachel, you quote Leviticus 19, love your neighbor as yourself. The chapter before affirms God's perfect law when it comes to sexual matters.
And just to be clear, he does not at any point denounce this use of scripture as outdated or misunderstood. He very specifically goes to a literal interpretation of Leviticus here, even going as far as to emphasize the point, to try to mansplain to Miss Rachel to include that point in her own biblical interpretation, who, by the way, uses her platform to advocate for Palestinian children as they are being completely slaughtered by the Israeli government with US taxpayer dollars. Here's Benjamin Netanyahu paying tribute to Charlie Kirk. Am I really surprised here? Not really. I thought Israel was the progressive democracy of the Middle East, but here's Benjamin Netanyahu paying tribute to a massive homophobe. I gotta be real with you, as much as you may think that I am celebrating this moment, I truly am not, because while I did out of my own free will decide to make this video, it is extremely painful to just listen to this motherfucker speak.
I just really want to know why you feel that abortion should be illegal.
Do you think murder should be illegal?
Murder is illegal.
So you think it should be? Do you think it should be illegal?
I just feel like there's a big difference between like a living, breathing human and then a fetus that is inside of another human's body.
Fair enough. What is the difference?
The difference is a fetus is inside of the body. You know what I'm saying? Like a fetus, it can't live on its own.
Got it. So let's go through a couple questions there. Why?
This is why he is frustrating, because he was asked a question, and instead of answering the question directly, he goes ahead and asks his own series of questions, all of which are rhetorical buzzwords, phrases that are scripted before he even showed up here.
My reasoning why I believe that abortion should be legal is because of instances like rape and incest, but I already know that your belief on that because you've already stated that if your daughter were to be raped at 10 years old, you would make her give birth to the baby.
Well, the baby would be delivered, and let me tell you why. And so, but first of all, let me try to find common ground. If I say that we will allow abortions to continue for rape and incest life of the mother, but all other abortions should be illegal, which is 99.4% of the time, can we make those 99% of abortions illegal?
And who would determine that? Who would regulate that? You? The same man who would force your 10-year-old daughter, if she were raped, to also carry her pregnancy to term? Are you for real? Fuck you. Now that Charlie Kirk's entire life has come to finality, we can reflect on the kind of person that he is, and truly judge him based on the life that he led. And I will judge him, because that's what he did. That's the life that he led. He judged people for a living, monetized judging other people for a living. There is value in the marketplace of ideas, especially when we're trying to come up with solutions to ongoing problems throughout humanity. But Charlie Kirk is a great example as to the opposite of that point. If this slug was ever interested in having his mind genuinely changed through debate and discussion, he would have been more open to challenging his own belief system. Yet, towards the end of his life, this is what he said about the Trump administration in regard to the Epstein files.
Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time being. I'm going to trust my friends in the administration. I'm going to trust my friends in the government to do what needs to be done, solve it, balls in their hands.
And thus is the legacy of Charlie Kirk, a man who was such a weasel that he couldn't question authority to save his own life, literally. And to all of his supporters, you guys are fucking freaks. I mean, just look at you.
I just murdered Charlie Kirk right here in Utah. I'm so freaking pissed right now. That's just bullshit. I just saw blood squirting out of his neck. I love that guy. He would have been our next president.
Where is this energy for Palestine? For people who were arrested for protesting a genocide? For people who are being separated from their families and thrown into concentration camps? For members of the LGBTQ+ community who are being murdered on a constant and regular basis? For every victim of Epstein and all of his clients? For all of the victims of the Catholic Church's child sex scandals? For victims of rape and incest who have to carry their terms because Christian nationalist fuckwads like Charlie Kirk think that they have to? For the victims of the Doge cuts that impact people's medical health care and income and their ability to get back on their feet? For actual victims of real fucking mass shootings at actual schools where children die? You know, like at the same time you made this fucking video? These supporters are mad because their favorite content creator is dead. And these first world gooners refuse to be reasoned with because Charlie Kirk himself specifically positioned himself to be unmovable, not to be reasoned with. This is not a man who has pioneered sparking debate in our common society. He is not a Greek fucking philosopher. He is, and will always remember to be, a pathetic little grifter, an opportunist just like the President of the United States. And while this is an incomplete summary of who he was as a person overall, there's so much I probably missed in this analysis. I am 2 years older than him. I'm definitely not wrong in anything that I've said about this man. He saw an opportunity to fame, and he took it. That's what he is. He's a grifter and an opportunist. He's not a revolutionary. He's not an activist. He would never push the envelope, ever, especially towards the Trump administration. But you can look at my shadow banned YouTube channel where I regularly critique the Democratic Party on a regular basis. Yet Charlie Kirk couldn't even do that for Donald Trump when it became obvious that Trump was on the Epstein files. And thus, the end of the legacy of a fucking loser. The bullet won the debate.